Go.
Hello, everybody. I'm Joe Castellano. Thanks for joining us here for this webcast podcast on the sportsvirus.com. We really appreciate you joining in with us, and I hope it's helping you during this shelter in place. We've got a really special show today. I do want to mention that yesterday I talked to Hall of Famer Mike Schmidt, and that podcast is available on the sportsvirus.com. And we'll have a webcast version of that available soon as well. But today, we're going to talk about the book Baseball Codes with Michael Duca, who is a co-author of that book. And we're going to talk to Sean Estes, former Giants left-handed pitcher, who is now an analyst for NBC Sports Bay Area. And Sean joins us right now. And Sean, wow, where are you? You look like you're doing a Sleep City commercial right now. What's up with that?
Yeah, well, I had to go to the quietest place in the house. I have little ones running around. I didn't want to be interrupted. I'm in my bedroom right now, and this is my headboard. So yeah, I couldn't be any more comfortable right now. So that could be a good thing, or you could put me right to sleep. Let's hope it's the latter, that I can stay awake and entertain you.
Yeah, that's the goal. I'm not gonna put you to sleep. I gotta make this as entertaining as possible. And I do want to start with the broadcasting part of your career here. You've entered into the broadcasting world, and you're doing such a good job. I have to say, we love watching you on the games or in the studio. And I know that's a very different animal when you switch from one to the other. How much are you enjoying it, and what are some of the challenges?
Well, last year was my first year, so I didn't really know what to expect. I knew that the guy that I was filling in for is pretty good. So there was a little bit of pressure already going into it. When you grow up, not really grow up, but I mean, I started listening to Krug and Kipe, when I was in high school. And then obviously I become a Giant, and they're calling my games and every other game now that I watch, doing the pre and post game show. So I realize how good they are, but it's a double-edged sword, because one, you get to learn from the best by listening to them every day, but then after actually going in and trying to fill Krug's shoes is impossible. So I knew that going into it. It's definitely been a challenge, but doing the pre and post game show was a challenge at first. And just the mechanics part of it, just being able to really go out there and be myself and be confident and be comfortable in front of a camera. It took me a long time to be comfortable in front of camera. And I would never have been ready to jump into the booth had it not been for the experiences that I had on the pre and post game show. But with that being said, an opportunity presented itself, and I was ready. Not to say that I went in and killed it, because I definitely have a lot of work to do, but I was more prepared last year than I ever had been at previous 8 years of doing pre and post. So it definitely is more difficult than I thought it would be. I have a lot more fun doing it just because you're there. You're at the games, you're traveling with the team. You feel like you're more a part of what's going on. And I get an opportunity to work with some of the best in the business, and Dwayne and John Miller and Dave Fleming. So it's been a great experience. It's been a challenge, but I was ready for the challenge. So now it's just a matter of going out, getting my reps, getting more comfortable with Kipe, and trying to be myself. Because I know that I'm never going to be Kruko. He's going to go down as one of the best ever, especially he's an icon in San Francisco. So I feel like a substitute teacher right now, because I don't think he's going anywhere. So I just feel like that I just want to go out and do my best, and hopefully, people like it.
I think there are a lot of players, when they're playing, they don't realize the amount of preparation that goes into being a broadcaster. When you first stepped in there, what did you see as far as, how much preparation you were going to have to do? And, working with those guys, you see it. I mean, you can definitely feel the preparation that comes out in the broadcast when you hear Kuiper and Krug.
Yeah, well, when you're doing every game, there's not a lot of prep other than maybe the other team that you have to talk about, or the opposing starting pitcher, or maybe a couple guys that are new in the lineup, because you get into a rhythm with your own team. How every guy's been playing. You can reference things that happened a couple days ago or even a month ago. So what I was saying about the pre and post and the fact that I wasn't really ready is I already knew how to prepare for a game, to actually talk about a game prior to watching the game, and then go on and talk about it after the fact. So the preparation part was the easy part for me. It was actually having more information for me was better. Not that I had to use it all in one broadcast, but you never know when there's a chance. If there's an extra inning game, you may need to fill a little bit more to have more information than I really needed. And then really Kuiper's great with the fact that he wants to do play-by-play. He doesn't want to sit there and he doesn't want to analyze, and he lets it breathe. So he allows me to talk about what just happened and offer my insight. Obviously, I'm a little bit more attuned to what's going on with the pitcher within a game, and I feel like that I can think along with the pitcher. But that's what Kuip's great, because he was a position player, so you can bounce some things off of him. And that was the advice that I got from Mike Krukow before I went into the booth, is that, hey, lean on Mike or lean on Dwayne a little bit when it comes to some stuff that you don't really know a whole lot about, being that he was a hitter and a position player. So I've trying to find the right balance with that, because like I said, he wants to do the play-by-play. He doesn't want to necessarily sit there and talk about what went on, but that's where I think the more reps that I get with Dwayne, the more comfortable I'll be with him, and I'll what will develop a much better chemistry. I mean, him and Mike played together. They're best friends. They can almost finish each other's sentences. Mike has seen so much of the game and knows about his own team so well that he can talk about hitting and sound like that he's a hitting coach. He can talk about an infielder and his ability to go to his left or right, or be prepared for a ball and take it on the right hop. I mean, where people believe that, even though he never played a position other than a pitcher. So that's something that, the fans have really, I think that's where that's where he does so well. He can cover the whole game. I'm still learning that part of it. So, but I enjoy it. I really do. It keeps me locked in for three hours, give or take, where the game just flies by. Where the pre and post game show, we're prepping, we're going on doing the show, then we sit and watch the game for 3 hours, and then we're going on for an hour. It's a long day. We're doing in the broadcast booth. The game seems to just fly by, which I really enjoy.
If we ever get a season going here in 2020, the Giants have a new manager in Gabe Kapler, and I'm curious what you learned about him during spring training. You guys did some games, and he's a new skipper. He's trying to really prove himself. What really stood out to you during spring training? What kind of a manager do you think the Giants have?
Well, other than he blew John and I off in a broadcast when we had him there interviewing,
I want to talk about that.
I actually really like Gabe. No, we have a little bit of history, not a lot. We played against each other. He was always he was more of a platoon guy. He was a big prospect. He was minor league player of the year before he got to the big leagues, and so he got everyday playing time. But he developed more of a platoon guy. He was a right-handed hitter, so anytime I faced whatever team he was on, he was usually in the lineup, being that I was left-handed. So I got to play against him. I went on a trip with him back in the early 2000s or early 2000s, mid 2000s. Got to know him a little bit more personally, and then got to see him manage a couple years in Philly. Obviously, as a manager, you read stuff, you see stuff, based on, you're not there every day with the guy, so you don't really know, how he is as a manager. Obviously, he came into it with a lot of baggage. I think he's got a lot of work to do to win over the city of San Francisco, but he's saying all the right things coming into spring training. But then I think what he did that really cemented himself, especially with the guys that are in that clubhouse, is that he's very good at communicating. So he went out and he communicated with all the veteran guys right away, every guy for that matter, but he really locked in on the veteran guys because he knew he was going to have to win them over when spring training started, because he knew that it wasn't going to be the typical spring training that they were used to. Bruce Bochy ran a little bit more loose. You let the guys go out and do what they need to do to get ready. They were going to be more hands-on. Got a young coaching staff that was very innovative, that had some new drills. Maybe a little bit more time consuming, more monotonous, but things that you had to have the veterans leading come spring training. And they did. They bought into it. From every guy that I talked to in the short amount of time that they were in spring training, said that the communication from top to bottom was second to none. the energy level in spring training that they hadn't seen before. So I was really looking forward to this season. Obviously, does that translate into wins? That's the most important thing. But Kapler and company were doing everything they needed to do to not only win the clubhouse, but also win the fan base. And that's going to take some time. But I think that they were heading in the right direction.
Well, it's really hard to walk that fine line, Sean. I mean, as a player that you'd like your manager to be that player's manager, and you played for Dusty Baker and he was always known as being that guy. But the knock on Gabe Kapler in Philadelphia, and Mike Schmidt even mentioned this the other day on the podcast, he was saying that the knock was that he was too much of a player's manager. There wasn't enough discipline. So I'm wondering if he's going to lean the other way a little more, like you mentioned, with the Giants to make sure, things are a little more in order.
Yeah, I think there's a balance there for sure. Dusty definitely had a perfect balance of being a player's guy, but also you knew when he meant business, and he was a disciplinarian as well, and you respected him. I respected the fact because he did it. He was a great player. He was a hitting coach. He's a funny guy. He's a great communicator. He had it all. He had it all as a manager. And I mean, I think the only knock on Bake was maybe his in-game management. I thought it was always great because he was a gut guy. There were some numbers he went with, but he was more of a gut guy. But players loved that. They loved the fact that he would trust a player and put him in a pressure situation that maybe was a little bit more not by the book. But as a player, you really started to believe in yourself when you're put in situations you didn't think you would be in. And then you obviously came out with some success. It made you better for the next time. Kapler's not going to be that guy. Everything's going to be pretty much by the book. There's not going to be a lot of gut decisions, if any. I think he learned a lot managing in Philadelphia as far as that balance is concerned but he also, like I said, he was smart about things. He understands that your veterans are the ones that police your team. And so he went to them right away. He also, and I think he's won them over. I think that they realize that they're the ones that need to be the leaders of that team. I'm talking about the Buster Posies, the Longorias, the Belts, the Crawfords, the guys that have been around for a long time that the younger guys will respect. He doesn't have to be that disciplinarian and have those meetings where he's throwing the spread around. That's not the guy he is. They do respect the fact that he's going to be super prepared, and he's going to, like I said, everything's very by the book now. So there's not a lot of like, oh, why did he make that decision? Because he can always have numbers to back it up. So the players aren't going to second guess that. I think where he's going to shine is his communication skills with the players on an everyday basis. Let them know if they're playing the next day or not. I think that's all a player wants to know is what their role is and if they're going to be in the lineup the next day so they can prepare for it physically and mentally. And I think that's where he does shine is that, and he puts a lot of faith and stock in his coaches to be those communicators as well. You heard a lot about, it's a collaborative effort, and he truly believes that he's the guy running the show, but he confides a lot in his coaches. And obviously it's Farhan and Scott Harris, it's a three-headed monster. It's not just, Kapler running the show. Like when Dusty, he was the face, he was running the show and everybody knew it.
Yeah. We flashed up a tweet that I had. We got to bring that back. I actually, Sean, sort of created a firestorm with Twitter. I was just sitting there on my recliner watching you and John Miller, and you're doing the game and you're interviewing Gabe Kapler, and you touched on this when we first started talking about Gabe. And, I'm enjoying the interview. It's great, actually. It's, it's in the middle of an inning. It's going pretty long, but still, he agreed to do the interview. And then all of a sudden he says, hey, I got to go, guys. We got the bases loaded situation. I got to bring my infield in, got to set my defense, takes off the headset. So I tweeted what we're seeing on the screen here, if you can read that, about that, he seems like a nice guy, but I just was annoyed that he would dump out of the interview like that. And that, it's a spring training game. I know it's serious that you want to be ready for the season, but I was flabbergasted that he would just do that to you guys. What was your reaction to it? And what did you hear about it afterward?
Well, my initial reaction was, wow, that was different. I had never seen it happen before. I think John was, maybe he didn't seem offended. He didn't talk to me about it afterward. but he might have been a little bit more offended. I mean, he's the Hall of Fame guy, right? I'm just there. I feel like I'm more of a peer of Gabe Kapler than I do, like, a Hall of Fame broadcaster that you just don't do that to, right? And John's kind of like taken aback a little bit by it at first, like, what is he doing? Where's he going? He's right in the middle of an interview. You got to talk to us. But I actually liked it. I thought it was great because it just showed me that how hyper focused he is. Even though it's spring training, he knows that he has to win over this team, right? He has to get the respect from his players. And I know his players know that it's spring training, but every guy on that bench knows that he's doing an interview. But when it really came down to it, they're thinking like, okay, he's looking out for the team right now. He's looking out for this guy on the mound. He's trying to save a run. He's trying to get season ready. What's he going to do during the season? Now, I know I couldn't do two things at once like that. Maybe Boch, with all the experience that he had, could give it an interview and also bring the infield in and get the job done. But Cap's like, no, I need to focus on what's going on in the field. And I think he gained a lot of respect. I think that's how he's going to gain respect from his players. Now, it worked too. He got a ground ball to Belt. They nailed the runner at home and saved a run. They got out of the inning. So it looked like it at the time. It was a great move. But I'm sure Boch would have just continued with the interview. He would have said, "Hey, Wotus," or whoever his bench coach was, "Hey, bring the infield in. You take over from here. I'm gonna talk to John and Sean." But I actually wasn't offended at all. I thought it was pretty funny. I thought it was good theater, to be honest with you.
It was good theater, and and I wasn't really upset about it, but I think that it was something that got out there, and then you end up with the polarizing response to it. Let's get to a little bit about your career, because I always think about 1997 as being such a great year. When I think about your career being 19-5, 3.18 ERA, you guys get into the playoffs, you win the division, you were an all-star that year. Was that the most special year, and what kind of a team was that?
Yeah, I probably should have just retired after that year. That would have been a pretty good start and finish to my career. But no, that was a special year in a lot of ways. People ask me what your best year was pitching. I wouldn't say that was my best year, maybe numbers wise. I felt like I had better years as far as how I pitched more consistently on a consistent basis. That year was just one of those years where everything just came together, from team to personally, winning the fans back in San Francisco. I mean, just, coming off of the strike year, 94, you have 95, then you have 96, the team that almost loses 100 games. Sabian makes some pretty bold moves in the winter. And then we don't know what to expect. A lot of I remember reading a lot of things about our team. A lot of people picked us to finish last in our division. There was a lot of unknowns coming into that 97 season. I knew that I'd be in the rotation that next year, but I didn't know how the rotation was going to look. I didn't know how our team was going to look. I didn't even know on paper how we looked. But I knew that there were some names that that had a track record. So I was excited about spring training in 97. Did I think that it was going to come together as fast as it did? I really didn't. But personally, it was one of those things where every time I pitched well, we win the game. And if I didn't pitch well, we didn't win the game, right? Or if I didn't pitch well, I got a no decision. If I pitched well, the bullpen came in and did their job and closed it down. I ended up getting credit for wins. The thing is like nowadays wins aren't as important because you go to the bullpen a lot earlier, but that was what the beauty of Dusty Baker was, is that he really rode his starting pitchers more than anybody else because he truly believed they were the best, guys on his staff. And so he wanted them to go as deep as they could. And pitch counts weren't really an issue then. So I had the ability to go deeper into the games because of that. And I always feel like in a baseball game, your decisions come around the 7th and 8th inning. And that's why back in the day, a good setup guy and a good closer, if you can get through 7 innings, you usually had a pretty good chance to win games. That was the case that year where we had a good setup guy. We had a good closer. We were reinforced at the All-Star break with Roberto Hernandez, another guy that was a closer. So you had Rod Beck and Roberto Hernandez in the back end of that bullpen. As a starter, you're just trying to get through 6 or 7 innings. So that was it. And offensively, our team was so much stronger in 97, as far as run support. So, like I said, I pitched well and I had a good first half. I made the All-Star team. I never made another one again. And if you would have told me then that I'd never make it, I would have said, you're crazy. Yeah, of course, I'll get back to the All-Star game, right? But that was it. It was a great experience with Rod Beck and Dusty and Barry Bonds and myself going to Cleveland that year. Everything kind of just came together that year. We ended up winning our division. Unfortunately, we got bounced in the first round, which is very unfortunate because we had to go on the road and play our first 2 games, which stunk, which never happened, which hasn't happened again since, but because of the wild card format. But it was a really special year. It didn't finish the way that obviously we all wanted it to, but it was the first team that really kind of set off a 6, 7, 8-year run of really good Giants baseball.
Well, one of the great individual accomplishments really in Giants history happened in 2000. So 3 years later, you had a game against Montreal where you pitched a shutout and you hit a grand slam. So the grand slam is the part that is really remarkable because, of course, you're capable of shutouts, but I don't think many people were thinking you're going to hit a grand slam. You only had 4 career home runs, if I'm right about that, Sean. So that had to be just amazing to everybody, right?
You're exactly right. Yeah. I mean, when you don't hit many home runs, and pitchers are not supposed to hit home runs, right? And there's a few that can do it. Obviously, we saw Bumgarner hit quite a few. Livan Hernandez was one that could hit one out. But that's not obviously what your job is. You're not supposed to go up there and hit home runs. Now in batting practice, that's a different story. You're trying to hit a home run pretty much every swing after the first round, just in case you do run into one in a game. You know what it feels like. Although that particular swing of the bat, I came up. We had a pretty good lead at that point. And maybe 4-5-0 was the lead. I can't remember exactly. And in that ballpark, that was a pretty good league. So that's a pretty good place to pitch. And I was thinking I was just going to take a pitch because, bases were loaded. We had a lead. I didn't quite know if that was the right time to go and ambush a first pitch. But I went up there literally with the bat on my shoulder and just was going to track a pitch. Everybody knows what track a pitch means. You're going to take a pitch, but you're going to get your timing on it. Well, that was my intention 100%. And as soon as the ball left his hands, for whatever reason, I said, I just swung. I don't know. I honestly don't know what got into me, but maybe the pitch just looked so good that I just had to swing. But I swung the bat and I hit it so pure. When you hit a ball so pure on the barrel, you don't feel it. So it's a weird feeling. And at first I thought I popped it straight up in the air. And so I'm kind of looked up in the air. And then I looked and I saw where the ball was going. I said, oh my gosh, that's got a chance to go out, because I'd hit enough of them in batting practice to where I kind of knew that the feeling of one, but you can square a ball up and hit it straight up in the air as well. So I realized as soon as I saw the trajectory of the ball, I got a chance to go, but then I wasn't sure. So I picked up the pace a little bit and then it went out of the ballpark. And from that point on, I honestly don't remember rounding the bases. Now you talk about having an out of body experience. The place went bananas. I was running like I don't know how fast I got around the bases, probably pretty quick. But I couldn't stop but smiling. You're not supposed to smile when you hit a home run. That's like the rule of thumb. You never want to see an opposing player hit a home run and start laughing. And so like Bumgarner, he'll actually watch the guy around the bases because he wants to make sure he's not getting shown up. But anyway, I was just trying hard to keep a grin off coming on my face, but I couldn't do it because I've seen replays of it that I was smiling. And then I get back into the dugout, everybody's high-fiving, and then Barry comes out and he starts to bow to me, which was pretty cool because they had that on camera. I got to see that after the fact as well. So when you get the home run king bowing to you after a home run, you did something pretty good. But yeah, and then I got to come out and give, the curtain call and everything. So the hard part was after that, fortunately the inning went on a little longer where I was able to actually allow myself to catch my breath, allow the heart rate to slow down a little bit where I was able to go back out and pitch. Because if bam, the next batter gets out and I have to go out and pitch, I'm not sure how the rest of that game goes, or that inning for that matter. I needed to get my legs back underneath me. And fortunately after that, I was able to pitch a pretty good game and we shut down the Expos. Never heard from that pitcher again in the big leagues. Mike Johnson was his name. But then in 2009, I'm in spring training with the Dodgers. And I hate to even mention that because I never pitched for the Dodgers in the big leagues, but I was in spring training with them. And I'm on the training room table, and it was during the WBC. And getting treatment on my shoulder. And I was just kind of listening to the WBC. And all of a sudden I hear coming in for Canada out of the bullpen, or he might have been starting, I can't remember, was Mike Johnson. And I looked up, and this was, 9 years later. I hadn't heard from him since. And sure enough, it was the Mike Johnson that I hit the grand slam off of. He was either starting or relieving for the Canadian national team in the WBC. And I had to tell everybody in the clubhouse at that point, that I took that dude deep.
I'm surprised he didn't throw at you because you were smiling, but
yeah, right. I'm sure he got taken out of the game soon after the home run.
Something that we will talk about later on this webcast as far as the baseball codes when we have the author of the book on Michael Duca. But I did want to ask you a couple more things about that. One is you were the first Giants pitcher ever to hit a grand slam. That's pretty cool. And you almost had a chance to hit another one. You came up with the bases loaded later in the game, right? You could have hit.
Yeah, I like to embellish that one because not intentionally, but because other fans that were at that game, that's the game that gets brought up the most in my whole career as a Giant. Is that a lot of the fans who were at that game have had a chance to talk to me, maybe being out at Willie Mays Plaza, doing the pre and post, whatever, see me around the ballpark. They bring up that game and they said, and you came up and hit one out the foul later on in the game with the bases loaded. And I'm like, yeah, I did. But it wasn't even close to going out. It looked like it off the bat, but it would have probably landed about, I'm saying probably 30 feet from the left field wall had it gone fair. But yeah, I came up later on in the game, bases loaded. And that time, like I've mentioned the first time I came up, I was going to take the first pitch. And so that was a fluke. That time I'm trying to go deep because I said to myself before I came up to the plate, I said, I'm sure there's been some grand slams from pitchers, but I'm sure there hasn't been two in one game. Now, I think there has been, but I can't remember who did it.
I think Tony Cloninger.
Tony Cloninger, yes. Okay, that's right. I knew it had a long last name. But yeah, I heard after the fact that it had been done. So it wouldn't have been as big a deal if I were, but I was thinking at that point, I'm pretty sure no one's ever done that before. So when I came up my second at bat, I was definitely trying to leave the ballpark. And I got a fastball and I ended up turning on it and it went foul and it was high in the air. So everybody thought, oh my gosh, he just did. But I did get a base hit. I did get a base hit. I think I drove in another run or two in that at bat. So that was one. That was one of those games that you'll never forget. It never will happen again it obviously never happened again in my career, but I did have to get on Bumgarner because he did hit a grand slam. And I tell him that, it was his first one. I did tell him, I said, you're the first guy to hit a grand slam myself. Thank you. And he ended up hitting another one. So he has two now. So yeah. Everybody forgets about mine, except for you. Thanks for bringing it up. Joe. Yeah, well, every once in a while on Giants Notes, this day in history, May 24th, whatever year it might be, they'll usually talk about the grand slam, and then Krug and Kuiper forced to say something again about it, which I'm sure they get tired of. But yeah, it was a long time ago. Well, 20 years ago, almost a month. We're a month away from it. 20 years ago.
Well, another moment that kind of seems to me like it was yesterday was 2002, and you're a Met, and you had a brief stay with the Mets, but man, you were involved in quite a key situation. The Mets and the Yankees, of course, have always had that rivalry, since we've had interleague play, but they met in the World Series, the Subway Series in 2000, and there was all kinds of animosity between Roger Clemens and the Mets, and especially Mike Piazza. And Piazza got drilled, and Piazza hit one back to the mound, and the bat broke. And Clemens thought the bat was the baseball. Actually hit he fouled one. I think it was the bat that came out towards Clemens, and he threw the bat towards Piazza. So there was a lot of animosity and anger. And these two teams had not met with Clemens batting since the 2000 World Series. So there was a chance to get some retribution. And you were the pitcher who had to put out that retribution. And you've told this story, I know, many times before, but man, it must be clear in your mind about how that went and what was going through your mind when you had to pitch to Clemens.
Yeah, lucky me, right? I happen to be the guy pitching that game in 2002. It's just luck of the draw right there. But I mean, what built up to that game? I actually didn't. I watched obviously the World Series, and I remember Piazza getting beamed earlier on in the year. But I didn't realize until my Mets teammates had told me, a couple of the guys that were there, the previous year in 2001, Clemens was scheduled to pitch against them in Shea. I was on the Giants that year. But something happened to Clemens, and he had an injury when he was going to pitch that game. I want to say he maybe made a next start post, the day appearance that he was supposed to pitch in. So the Mets fans, guys that were on him in 2000, they've assumed that he was ducking. 2002, fast forward, he couldn't do it 2 years in a row, right? Not that I don't understand. I don't understand why he would even have done it in 01. Like, he knows he's going to get drilled. What does he care? I mean, he's a big dude. Just get it over with, right? Like, if I'm him, I'm thinking, like, I'm taking the ball. Go ahead and hit me. I'll take my base, and then I'll try to beat you, and it'll be done. But he didn't in 01. He ducked him in 01, and so too he couldn't. So I'm on the mound. And I didn't have that same animosity toward Clemens that everybody else did on that team, or the fans for that matter. Heck, I was a Giant note 2000. We're trying to beat the Mets in 2000. They ended up beating us and going to play the Yankees and Roger Clemens. And so I didn't like the Mets. I didn't like the Mets. I didn't like Mike Piazza. I didn't care. So now I'm his teammate. I had to like him. Well, I feel like that, Piazza had a chance to I always looked at it like this. Piazza was the catcher. Okay. What position on the field outside of a pitcher can you get close to a batter? It's a catcher, right?
Yeah, right.
He's in the box. If you don't like the guy and you have an issue with him that much, the guy tried to end your career. According to Mike, he feels like that Clemens drilled him in the head on purpose or tried to, and he could have ended his career. I agree with that. I would hate the guy. I mean, I would do it. But if the guy steps in the box and I got a chance for retribution, I'm going to take care of it business right there.
Yeah,
I'm not going to let my pitcher take care of it for me. What is it getting hit in the leg or in the butt going to do?
So just
right? That doesn't.
Right then, just go.
Yeah. I mean, you have the right. You're sitting there. You look up to me and say, "Hey, man, you get up. If you want to fight him, go ahead."
Yeah. Why do you have to hit him?
Like, why does it? Right? Why are you allowing your pitcher to hit the guy? I never understood that. It bothered me, but I was going to do what I needed to do. So I wore it from the media for 4 days leading up to that start. Like, I wore it. Like, every day media wanted to come up and just talk about, like, what are you going to do to Clemens? You understand the history. I'm like, yeah, I know now. I got done pitching a game before that, and I actually pitched pretty well. And I didn't pitch well at all that year for the Mets. Very few games I pitched well. Well, I pitched well in the start before that, and I came in, media came in, and they didn't talk to me about the game at all. Your next start is against, right? I'm like, actually, I hadn't even looked. I think it's the Yankees, but yeah. And you're like, well, no, not just the Yankees, but Clemens is pitching. Well, great. He's going to be a future Hall of Famer. I can't wait. No, you have to drill him, right? So this happened. This went on for 4 days. So I didn't hear one word from Piazza or Valentine, our manager, for 4 days. Okay. Mo Vaughn, who was on our team, Robbie Alomar on our team, all these guys, veteran guys that weren't on the team in 2000, they came up to me and they just said, hey, do what you got to do. If Mike or Bobby don't say anything to you, you go out and we're trying to beat the Yankees. Don't worry about any of this noise going on around you. I'm like, all right. They said, but if Mike says something to you or Bobby says something to you, obviously you got to take care of things. So the day of the game, I don't hear anything. The day of the game, Bobby, I'm talking about on the way out to the mound. I'm not talking like 2 hours before when I'm eating my peanut butter and jelly in the food room. On the way out to the game to get warmed up, Bobby pulls me into his office, and Mike's sitting there, and they say, I already knew what it was about, but I'm just like, really? You're going to tell me that right now? You had all week to tell me this. Fine. He's like, all right. And it was quick. It was like, here's the sign, here's the sign. And when you get the sign, you throw it. So I'm like,
well, what is the sign, by the way? The middle finger? No.
Yeah, right. Now that would have been way too obvious. Like nobody knew. I mean, the state, they honestly, it was a national game, I believe. And the place was sold out. So everybody knew it was going on. So I think the sign was, so catcher's right-handed. I think it was just a glove to his catcher's glove to the left kneecap. I think that was it. And then he puts the sign down, but glove to the left kneecap. So he comes up in the third inning, pitched pretty well the first 2 innings, nobody on, 2 outs. Actually, they might have had a hit, but I think I don't even remember the situation. But I'm just waiting for the sign. So I get it. And I reach back and I'm like, this is my one chance, because I know that if I go up and in, or if I go behind him, or I got one chance, because I knew there would probably be warnings. And so I reached back and I let it go as hard as I could. And as we're seeing right here, I think we can see it.
The result.
I'm looking at it. It just goes right behind him. He moves his hind end out of the way, and it misses him. Umpire comes out and says that both benches are warned. Next time someone gets drilled, they're getting ejected. So I'm like, great. I'm like, now, okay. I said, well, if I get the sign again, I'll throw at him again. I'll throw at him till I hit him. Now, you got to understand, like, I don't have the same animosity, say maybe an Al Leiter does, because Al Leiter was on that team in 2000. He would have kept throwing at him, got ejected, and whatever, gone and hit the showers early. But I'm thinking, like, if I don't get the sign again, I'm gonna try to get these guys out. I'm pitching against the Yankees. They're juggernaut. They're the powerhouse, right? I want to pitch well against them for our team's sake. So I don't get the sign again. So I just kept pitching, and obviously there was a lot of boos. But I ended up pitching one of my better games that year. I think 7 shutout. I punched out, I think, 11 guys. And then later on in the game, I come up and I end up hitting a home run off of Clemens. So the retribution, in my opinion, was all that. That's all I needed. And to be honest with you, like, knowing Clemens and the ego that he has or had, that probably hurt worse. That probably hurt worse than getting hit by a pitch. An opposing pitcher, because he was an American League guy. He didn't have to face pitchers. So, and he never gave up a home run to a pitcher after that in his career. And he pitched a little bit in the National League. So that probably hurt worse. Trust me, it felt a lot better for me to do that than it would have to actually drill Roger Clemens. So another one of those games I'll never forget. Because it was a national game, a lot of people watch the game. It's another game that gets brought up quite a bit. But as Mets fans, I don't know if they'll ever feel like I did the right thing. They wanted me to hit them. And we had a team party that night. It was a joint party. It was a Yankee Met party at a guy's club. Mark Guthrie and our team with the Mets and Roger Clemens both had, this guy was their mutual friend, and he owned the club. So there was this joint team party after the game that night. It was always planned. And I knew Giambi from the A's days when I played for San Francisco. He was on the Yankees at the time. First guy I run into, because I go to this party, is him. Comes up, gives me a big hug. He's like, there's no way you could have won. He's like, even if you would have, with the Mets fans, he was pumped for me that I hit the home run, But he said, and he's on the losing end of this, right? But he said, even if you would have hit Clemens, the Mets fans would have not been, that still wouldn't have been happy. They wanted Roger Clemens to be hit in the head, taken off on a stretcher, blood coming out of his ears, and his career finished. That's how much they hated Roger Clemens. So, Now, if I drill him? Yeah, obviously they're much more okay with it than him not getting hit. But at the end of the day, like, I was okay with the way it all finished up. I know that the Mets fans weren't. Maybe even some of my teammates weren't. Bobby Valentine obviously showed some frustration in the dugout after I missed him the first time, so I'm sure he wasn't okay with it. But looking back on it, I think it's a much better story than actually hitting him and he goes to first base. Actually being able to come up and hit a home run, much more enjoyable for me anyway.
Yeah, the message was sent, and then you hit the home run. All right, before we let you go, we're going to have Michael Duca come in here and say a quick hello. You've known Michael for a long time. We're going to be talking to him about his book, The Baseball Codes, which has been around for a while. Of course, that's the kind of story that's great in the book about, retribution. So, Michael, you were glad to have a moment like that to write about, right?
I was. I enjoyed interviewing Sean about that a great deal. And what I remember from the interview, Sean, more than anything else, is you taking about 8 minutes telling me how difficult it is mentally when you spend your entire life focusing on throwing through the catcher, that you suddenly had to actually aim at a moving target in the batter's box.
Well, right. But no, because nobody, you're right, Michael, because nobody really thinks about that. Okay. So how many times does a guy come up to the plate where they know 100% they're getting thrown at? Now, as far as I know, there's always maybe there might be guys that know they're going to probably get hit, but there's still maybe 1% or 2 that maybe they're not going to hit me this time. There was not a question in Roger Clemens' mind that I was going to throw at him. So if you know that someone's going to hit you with a hard object coming at 90 plus miles an hour, you probably got a better chance to get out of the way of it than you do if you don't know. If you're firmly planted in the box looking for a pitch, and then all of a sudden you're surprised by that pitch, right, coming at you that you can't get out of the way in time. So that worked against me for sure, because I had to almost be perfect. Like, I had to be in a spot where he couldn't get out of the way, but I also didn't want to throw at him above his waist, because I'm not going to end his career, right? I'm not going to throw out his head, so I'm not even going to mess around with up here. So I'm aiming at waist down, and there's a lot that's tough to do. I mean, really, it is. It's tough to do. It's harder than it looks. Now, in my career, did I hit guys them not knowing that I was going to hit them, but me knowing I was trying to hit them? Absolutely. But they couldn't get out of the way. So, because they didn't know it was coming. So it was the element of surprise. So yes, you're right. I did spend a lot of time explaining that. Not that I had to sit there and justify what happened and make excuses for not hitting him, because if they would have given me the sign to hit him again, I would have tried again. And eventually I probably would have hit him if they gave it to me enough. But I had one chance to do it, and I didn't do it.
That was the end of that.
It was the most fascinating part of it. It brought, if you can use this term, it brought humanity into the situation, because, everybody just assumes, well, geez, he's a major league pitcher. He's used to being able to, hit the end of a cigarette, let alone a cigarette pack, throwing to his catcher. So how the hell can he miss a 230-pound human being? But
yeah,
not as easy as you think, because there's that whole mental thing of, you spent your whole life saying, I don't want to hurt somebody.
Yeah. And add a little bit of adrenaline into the mix, add a little, pressure because of the magnitude of like what's going on, and knowing that, you're doing it for a teammate that you may not be 100% sold on doing it for. Right. Not that I didn't like Mike Piazza, but like I was, I'm thinking this is his battle.
Yeah.
This is his battle. So,
Right.
and if you really want to do something about it, you're closer than I am. So, there is a lot of unwritten rules of baseball, of these subtle things, the retribution and whatnot. But there's not that I can remember, at least in my career or any baseball that I've ever watched, where there's a 2-year buildup to a pitch, a batter being hit by a pitch where everybody knows it's going to happen. That's what made it pretty special. The fact that I was able to pitch pretty well that game and hit a home run off of them, and a lot of the world, or a lot of the country, was watching. So, Yeah, I mean, Met Yankee fans bring it up, that I've run into over the years, and they want me to tell the story. So it's had some legs, since then.
The only buildup I could think of is that Madison Bumgarner is constantly dreaming of hitting Yasiel Puig. That's about it. I think every time Puig comes up, he wants to hit him, right?
Yeah, I'm sure he does. But I don't know if it's just because he doesn't. I know it's because he just doesn't like the guy. But if Puig had tried to end Madison's career, we would have seen Puig, or Madison thought Puig was trying to end his career at any time. That we would have seen them get after it already by now. It would have happened the next time they faced each other. It wouldn't have been a build up. It would have been Madison would have taken care of it as fast as he could.
Yeah.
There would have been some fisticuffs, and that would have been great to watch. To be honest with you, I would have loved it. And we may end up still one of these days seeing those two go after it.
But. Yeah, we might. Sean, thanks a lot for the time. We really appreciate it. Go back to sleep. You got the sleep sitting bed right there. Make sure all of the analytics, the data that you have on that bed, it's all set to the right position. And look forward to seeing you hopefully when we have some baseball.
Yeah, I am. I'm looking forward to it as well. Joe, thanks for having me on. Michael, good to see you. We'll talk to you guys later.
Take care. Sean Estes, former Giants left-hander, now doing a great job as analyst with NBC Sports Bay Area. Now we do bring in Michael Duca in the full display here, co-author of the book Baseball Codes. And retribution is definitely a big part of the book that you and Jason Turbo put together. I would say, there are so many things going on there, with players having grudges against other players. So how did you approach that when you guys were doing the interviews? I would think that sometimes that could get to be kind of sensitive with some players.
It could, but basically what we did was we boiled down the unwritten rules to a single sheet of paper that I laminated and carried around with me. And we kind of went through that step by step with people, depending on the amount of time that we had with them. If people were only able to give us 4 or 5 minutes, then we usually went in focused on a particular incident that we had already researched and looking to get a little bit more nuanced information on it that maybe wasn't available when the game stories were written, because guys can't be very honest the day that they hit somebody, or they're going to spend a lot of their hard-earned money at the commissioner's office. But basically, we found guys were perfectly willing to talk about it at differing levels, and they were also willing to talk about what would trigger that kind of response. And it's interesting because over the years it's changed. I mean, Sparky Anderson, the late Sparky Anderson, told us, one of the biggest triggers is you run with a big lead late in the game. And he said, I don't know what a big lead is, and I don't know what late is, but I know that if I have a 4-run lead and my bullpen can't hold it, shame on me. I got no business throwing at you because you were running. And Sparky would also tell you that one of his rules was if guys went back to back, the third guy took 2 pitches, period. If they were right down the gut, you took 2 pitches. You didn't go, his feeling was, we already got the guy on the ropes. You don't go out there and try to humiliate somebody who's trying to earn a living for his family, which that's not the way you think these guys think out there in the heat of battle. But, Sparky thought that way.
It seems like it's looser today. Outside of Madison Bumgarner, there aren't that many pitchers that seem to take a lot of exception to some of the showboating that goes on. I think it's more an accepted part of the game. There's just more colorful players. So, I don't know. Maybe you could tell me what your thoughts on that. But it seems like, the period of time that you were doing those interviews with some of those older players, it was definitely more intense as far as retribution and just, making sure that the baseball codes were kept intact.
That's a very complicated question, and you're going to have to give me about 4 minutes to really delve into it. But I think that in bygone days, there was more of a bent towards retribution because guys were making $20,000-$30,000 a year to play the game, not $2 to $20 million a year to play the game. So, when your paycheck has 6 or 7 zeros in it, you're going to be a little bit more cautious about who you irritate and how you irritate them, and about who you're irritated by. You couple that with the fact that nowadays, guys on opposing teams have been teammates, oftentimes on national teams, on travel teams, on college teams, on Olympic teams, on minor league teams. And then you look at the fact that they probably share the same agent with at least 4 guys in the other dugout. And it's just a different thing now. It's a really different thing now. But I do think I am an old school guy, and I do think that the game was a better game when the players policed it themselves. I think that when we went to the point, Sean mentioned in his retelling of the Roger Clemens piece that he was concerned about the umpires coming out and issuing warnings to both benches and et cetera. In that instance, I don't have a problem with the umpires issuing warnings. Like Sean said, the entire planet knew what was going to happen before it happened. Fine. But 9 times out of 10, like he said, guy doesn't know it's coming. Guy doesn't know that it's his time. And there's a whole school of thought that says if you know that your time is coming, but you don't know when it's coming, you're going to act a little bit circumspect, and you're going to be a little bit lighter on your feet and a little bit less digging into the box for a while. And there are a lot of pitchers who said, I didn't want to retaliate immediately. I wanted them to think about it, and I wanted to get in their heads and have them wonder, is today the day? Then you brush them back, or you get them out with the curveball thrown right at that front shoulder that drops in and makes them look silly and strikes them out. And, it's a game within a game that continues on. But I do think that once we asked umpires to intuit intent behind a pitch, we lost something elemental to the game.
Yeah,
I think that, players knew when they had done wrong, and players had a code for how to deal with that. We were shocked after our book came out, Joe, to find out that there are a number of universities in this country that are using it as a textbook. And they're using it as a textbook in sociology. Neither Jason nor I don't think could even spell sociology. And I never even took a sociology class in college. Couldn't define it for you if I had to. But when I talked to a friend who has PhD in sociology and who uses the book, he said, well, you've written a book about a closed society, about a society that develops its own rules and then enforces its own rules through a set of social conventions and mores. And that's sociology. So I do think that it was an important part of the game, and I think that the game is missing a little something with that not there. That being said, I'm not a fan of, and was never a fan of, anybody throwing above the elbow guard. Even aiming at the triceps is a little bit dangerous to me, because I know I don't have control or command. Of course, I don't have a fastball either, but even still, I don't have control or command of a pitch. If I tried to hit you in the shoulder, I'm just as likely to hit you in the neck as I am to hit you in the ribs. And I don't think that that's ever authorized or warranted. But, it is a different game than it was 20 years ago. It is a different game than it was 40 years ago. I'm not sure it's that much a different game than it was 10 or 12 years ago, because my friend Dallas Braden might beg to differ with you that some of these rules are out of date and obsolete.
Well, one thing's for sure, this season, the Astros right now are getting a break because it's a delayed season, because everybody was hot and heavy about getting retribution with the Astros after the cheating scandal. And in your book, I thought one of the fascinating chapters and people was Al Worthington, because Al Worthington was part of a couple of teams that were doing some cheating, and he didn't want any part of it, right?
Al Worthington was a very, very religious Southern Baptist boy, and he had no truck for that. He thought that that was the same thing as lying, and he didn't believe in it, and he didn't want to be part of it. Another guy who kind of seemed to have felt that way after the fact, but not during the heat of battle, was Hall of Famer Bob Feller, who went out of his way during the steroid era to say that he didn't want anybody who was ever associated with steroids to even be allowed to purchase a ticket to the Hall of Fame, let alone be enshrined in the Hall of Fame, because he didn't believe that cheaters belonged in the game at all. This is the same Bob Feller that brought an anti-aircraft spotting scope back from World War II and had it installed in the scoreboard in Cleveland, where it was used for 2 years.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, everybody's trying to get an edge, and sometimes it's a little hypocritical to say, that I would never cheat or I wouldn't take a sign or whatever it is. But it is a difficult position to be in when you're a guy like Mike Fiers, who ended up blowing up that whole story, because when he was on the Astros, of course, he's benefiting. His team is winning. They're winning the World Series. He gets a ring out of it. And then later, he blows the whistle. And thank goodness he did, because then we'd still have cheating. But his position is a very difficult one to be in.
It is. You and I have a mutual friend, John Shea, who's a fine national baseball writer for the San Francisco Chronicle. And I talked with John about that at some length during spring training this year. I told him that it was my belief that the story of the year this year was not going to be how teams responded to the Astros cheating or how fans responded to the Astros cheating. I thought the story of the year was going to be how players treated Mike Fiers, whether or not he suddenly became a pariah and got treated like the replacement players did after the strike.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, how topical it'll still be when we get later in the season, if we even have a season. If you're talking about starting up next year and you miss the 2020 season, I'm not sure people are really worried about these guys anymore. Before we finish up, Michael, we're running out of time here, but I did want to get to no-hitters, because in your book you talk about a Bert Blyleven no-hitter, and of course there's the superstition there of, hey, you never talk to a pitcher when he's got a no-hitter going, and I think Blyleven was maybe a little taken aback by that, right? In the book he was saying something about how he wanted to talk to some people, but they weren't talking to him because of the no-hitter rule.
Yeah, David Cohn was the same way. He would run down the hallway out of the dugout and sometimes grab a quick cigarette and sometimes not, but he wanted to go down there and just grab teammates and talk to them about it where nobody could see them doing it, because the tension of not being spoken to for 9 innings was driving him crazy. It's simply hard for me to believe. I mean, I've heard pitchers say, well, I looked up in the 7th or 8th inning and suddenly realized, looking at the scoreboard, oh my God, I've got a no-hitter. I have a lot of difficulty with that one. When you talk to pitchers, you heard Sean. He told you that Clemens came up with 2 outs and nobody on in the 3rd inning because he'd gone through the first 8 hitters. I mean, they don't forget.
No, they don't forget at all. One thing that does get me about no-hitter talk, as far as the superstition of it, is broadcasters, to me, in my opinion, have no choice but to tell the listener or the viewer on television that there's a no-hitter going on. I mean, to me, that's part of the job, is, you're describing what's happening. And baseball players a lot of times get angry about that. They think it's jinxing the pitcher if an announcer says anything about it. So I don't know how much you've run into that.
I remember as a teenager living in San Diego, we could get KFI on the radio. KFI was a 50,000 watt clear channel station. And at that time, it was the home of the Dodgers. And even though I grew up a Giants fan and maintained in San Diego, my high school baseball coach was a regional scout for the Giants. Nonetheless, I spent a lot of time listening to the only man I ever knew who could seamlessly weave Shakespeare into a sentence about a curveball. And I distinctly remember hearing in real time, 2 and 2 to Harvey Keene.
Right.
And I knew what that meant because Vinny had told us all the way through the game that Sandy Koufax was pitching a perfect game. And I cannot for the life of me as a journalist imagine hiding that important a piece of the truth from listeners, especially especially on television. It just makes no sense at all. Every half inning, you put up a slide that shows that a team doesn't have any hits. Why can't you say it if you can see it?
Exactly. So I gotta tell the listeners and the viewers what's going on. Michael, thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. I know a lot of people want to pick up your book and read it. They've got a lot of extra time on their hands right now with the shelter in place. So the baseball codes. Thanks a lot for joining us and taking some time.
Thank you.
That's Michael Duca, who also works for Major League Baseball. He's an official scorer over there at Oracle Park, one of the many jobs that he does for MLB. Well, I want to thank Sean Estes and Michael Duca for joining us today. I want to thank our sponsors. TPC Harding Park has been a great sponsor in all the podcasts that we have. They're closed right now due to the city and county shelter-in-place order until further notice. However, TPC Harding Park is pleased to announce that the 2020 PGA Championship has been rescheduled, and hopefully they'll get this in August the 3rd through August the 9th. For additional information, all you have to do is visit tpc.com/Harding Park, or feel free to contact them at 102pga@pgahq.com. Also, want to thank Sunfirst Solar for being one of our sponsors as well, and you can reach them at 415-458-5870. And you saw Kane's Tire on there as well. Kane's Tire has been a good sponsor for us on all of our different podcasts. And actually, here's my receipt. Kane's Tire today. I went there and got a brand new tire because I hit a pothole. We got to fix those potholes. Hit a pothole, had to get a new tire, and there you go. So join us again next week. We're going to talk about another book, and this one written by Joan Ryan. It's a really good book that I just got my hands on called Intangibles. It's about chemistry, baseball chemistry. So that's going to be fun to talk about. And also, our good buddy Ray Woodson, former KMBR talk show host, is also going to be our guest next week on this Webcast podcast. For now, I'm Joe Castellano. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for watching on thesportsvirus.com.